Thank you, Paul.
I stepped out beyond the lens, whirling in its mercury pool. Cyclops turned, searched south, west, north, east, then south again. My reality, bent by angled prisms, eased through panes, glittered a galley rail, and looked below to where my keepers had lived. Doors blinded, windows boarded, and passages a faded blue. In the once clear yard where shearwaters had struggled on rum-dark nights, ragwort, nettles, and fireweed thrived. Stretching my arms, I reached to finger each cottage, barn, and cross, and I swept my blade and its four stittering tips beneath worn sills and into the eyes of houses, into the eyes of houses, into the eyes of houses. And like the architect's pen, I carved away the dark. Thank you. Noswaith croeso I tea traders, Carrifyrddin, croeso yn ystafell, croeso on YouTube. Thank you very much to Paul and Nick for hosting this event tonight as part of Coracle Europe Fringe, which is a festival of spoken word and poetry events that have been started in Cardigan last night and will be finishing in Cwrw in Carmarthen on Monday evening. This afternoon, some of us have been at a guerrilla poetry event. And you know, if you talk to us nicely, some of us might model the t-shirts that we wrote on this afternoon, and you know, went out and declaimed poetry in the streets of Carmarthen. But tonight is an evening of conversation and poetry and creative writing and short fiction about kind of linked with our experiences of time on an essentially Bardsey Island. And I'm really pleased to be joined tonight by three women who, between them, have spent time with me on Bardsey Island this year. And on my right, Imelda Carroll, who is from County Wexford in Ireland. Imelda is a playwright, short story and screenwriter. She's got a strong clutch of Best Comedy, Best Short Films awards from international festivals, particularly in 2021, culminating in 2022, not long before we met, with the Fleabag Award for the Best Screenplay for her film Chicken Out at the Dublin International Comedy Festival. So welcome to Imelda. On my left, Jane Campbell, otherwise known to her friends as Madge, lives near Lampeter in Ceredigion, and Madge is a poet. I'm going to call you Madge. Yeah. Madge is a poet and winner of the Jet Stevens Memorial Prize in 2021 for her collection Slowly as Clouds. And if any of you were in Cardigan, or you can see it on YouTube, the performance that Madge did in Celabards in Cardigan last night. Really powerful, moving, gorgeous, beautifully held performance of her work. And as well as the Jet Stevens Award, she was the winner of the Disability Arts Cymru Creative Writing Award for Poetry. And Slowly as Clouds is published by Individual Dreams. And there are copies in sale later. And then also on my left, Lottie from Carmarthen, poetry, short story, creative non-fiction, but a broad range of material. Currently in the second year of the MA in creative writing in Swansea University, and is writing a lot of articles for Nation Cymru, and also is writer of poet in residence at Studio Kennan in Llandilo. So Imelda, Madge and Lottie, welcome. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Mel Perry, and I'm one of the co-directors in Right for Word, who is staging the festival. So, Bardsey Island, and essentially, what is it? Where is it? Don't know how many of you know very much about the island, but it's a small island off the tip of the Llŷn Peninsula. I often describe it as the little dribble of snot off the tip of the Llŷn in North Wales. 2 miles long, 1 mile wide, smaller than Skomer, which many people locally will be familiar with. Only 2 miles off the mainland, but beyond, or kind of in the midst of, a very treacherous sound. And if you look at the geography, the landscape of the Llŷn Peninsula, with its very steep mountains that kind of go like that on the mainland, we can only wonder at what sort of topography there is on the sea floor, out of sight, beneath the sea. Although when the tide goes down, we do catch glimpses of some of those what would be mountaintops. So it's a very treacherous place to get to. And it has a mountain which is about 500 feet. We call it a mountain, but we call it a mountain, don't we?
It's a mountain.
It's a mountain.
I don't know if it is.
You can say more
Not
about that
quite
later. Not quite a mountain. And the mountain has its back to the mainland, to the Tir Mawr. So once we're on the island and on the west side of the mountain's face, where the houses are, we're kind of cut off, very much visibly cut off from the mainland, from the Tir Mawr. And I think that's one of the island's gifts. It's one of its secrets, really, one of its joys. The island, popularly known as the Island of 20,000 Saints, maybe not, but certainly there are more than 20,000 pairs of Mount Shearwaters, and the island hosts a portion of 90% of the world's population of Mount Shearwaters, which are Skomer, Skocum, Enlli and Rum in Scotland. Many other seabirds, many other, at this time of year, passing birds, migrants. Fascinating flora, some very rich orchids, lichens, mosses, things that we might not necessarily see on the mainland. And also because the air is so clean there, things have got the chance to prosper and flourish. So it's a national nature reserve, a site of special scientific interest. It's also a place of pilgrimage. There's a ruined abbey, and the community, the original community, one of the early communities on the island, was established by a group of monks. So it's got a strong spiritual hold, and people describe it as a very thin place, somewhere that's very close between this world and the next. It's mostly off-grid. No or little electricity. What electricity there is either wind or solar generated. Yes, there are gas fridges and gas cookers, but there's no electric light in the houses. So little internet, although we can get 4G now by going to certain points on the island. So it is more connected with mainland life than it used to be. I've been going there with my family for 25 years, and we went the first year, and then we thought, yeah, we'll go the second year, and then by that time the children were hooked, and just we've been every year for the last 25 years, and more than once a year. Our daughter worked there for 3 years. She was the island manager, and she's now chair of the Bardsey Island Trust, which owns the island. So it's not a National Trust property. It's not an RSPB property. It's owned by a small charity, Bardsey Island Trust. And it's a living, working island. There's a farm there. There are people who make their living in this very small community. And at this time of year, there would be probably 6 or 7 people living on the island. And then that grows in summer with people being able to rent the Victorian, the 19th century farmhouses that were built by the then owner for his community. So that's just a kind of a brief potted geography and history of the island. So I've been going there for a long time, and the writer Christine Evans, whose son is the boatman, Christine married a man of the island, a man who was born on the island, and she was a teacher, an English and a history teacher, and became a poet, and she was always a writer, but she very much focused on poetry. And she set up a writing group to support the Bird Observatory, which is the other organisation associated with the island. And Christine invited me on the writing group, probably about 15 years ago now. And it was kind of, I suppose it's her encouragement and her inspiration that ultimately led me to think, well, you know, as I develop my own writing career, that it would be great to share the opportunities that the island has to stimulate people's creativity. So that's kind of why we're here this evening. We'll have a bit of a conversation about the island, and Imelda, Lottie and Madge will read some of their work, and I might read some of mine. We had two separate residencies. I had a residency or retreat with Imelda and Madge in May. And then in June, Lottie joined me with another group of women with whom the writing group that Christine set up. So one of Christine's poems, Enlli, which is in the selected poems books, Enlli. We get to it through troughs and rainbows, flying and falling, falling and flying, rocked in an eggshell over drowned mountain ranges. The island swings towards us slowly. So that's kind of that sense of arriving, of getting to the island. And I very clearly remember my first arrival on the island when we travelled from Pwllheli by boat, and it was very stormy when we left Pwllheli, but we arrived into a very calm place on the island, a safe place where the boats come in. And I was wondering, for people who've not been there before, what it was like when you first arrived there, and what was your anticipation, and what was your arrival like?
Well, we arrived 2 days late for a start because and as Mel said, it's cut off from the mainland. It's as wild as can be, and the weather also takes a turn in that. And so on the Saturday, when we were meant to be going, the storm came in and lasted 48 hours. And so then we found ourselves going on the Monday, and we arrived in Court Farm. Then you have to walk down the lane to where the boat eventually through is. And it was a beautiful day. It was blue sky, it was sunshine, and I was expecting perhaps a calm ride. But it was a bit wilder than what I was anticipating, and that just made it so exciting. And I remember sitting on the side of the boat, but the spray, because it was going up and down, the spray coming in was hitting me, so I thought, well, I better move. So and I moved into the middle of the boat and was facing back towards the mainland, having a great time. It was so much fun, so much fun. And then someone patted me on the shoulder, and I stuck. And I turned around, and there she was. Like, and she was just there. And the moment I saw, it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Yeah, I loved my journey across. It was great fun.
I think I was a little bit similar to Lottie, because we were lucky because I came over from Ireland, from Wexford to Fishguard on Friday, and then we drove up on Saturday, collected that on the way. But it was a beautiful day, and we went down the lane and everything as well. But I was been sitting in a similar part of the boat, because I kept kind of waiting to see this island. And where's the island? And I was going, yeah, you can't really see it from here. And so we had no preview of it. because we couldn't actually see it from the land, from where we were going. And then I was sitting in the middle of the boat, which then I was kind of placed not to see it, but you nodded at me, Madge, kind of, and I went like that, and that was the first glimpse I had of the huge big cliffs and all the seabirds, and we were dying to see a puffin. But that's the most, but we didn't see one on the way in that time, but then we got in and it was great. Yeah.
Yeah. I was surprised how frightened I was, because this thing about you can't go if the weather's even slightly bad, because the crossing is so dangerous that the boatman has to be really, really skilled, and there's only one, so he's got to do it. But they bring it up onto land. They've got a whole system where they bring up the boat onto land, and then you climb aboard, and then a tractor drags you into the sea. So it's a kind of catamaran or something. But yeah, the feeling that you don't usually get in modern life of actually this is deadly. It's potentially a situation where you could die. It was quite shocking to me. I ended up putting it into a poem that I was writing about death by water, but it was quite a strange experience. I got a bit of spray in my face, but yeah, I had that feeling that, yeah, not everyone, that the idea that people had died on this journey, quite a lot of people had died on their way to Enlli, was really quite moving.
Would you like to read your waterfall now? Or?
Yeah, I can do. It's about grief, the poem, and the influence was of understanding the feelings of death by water. So it's not directly about Enlli, but about the drama had affected me. It's called Drowning Sorrow. I show my grief to the lake, watch rain sketch silver circles on its skin as autumn leaves seep Day of the Dead colours. I wade in, sink blurred beneath, waiting for drops to plunge like feeding birds, for red gold to drift down, sediment to suffocate me. It's too weak, so much like sliding into quiet sleep. Furious, I storm into the sea, hope she's wild enough to claim me, plead with the deep to flood my body. Surge slaps me under, delivers all that I need. But as a riptide twists my feet and waves thunder down to choke me, my lungs rebel, cough out froth. Mutinous limbs strike back for shore, repeating, where the dead go, we must not follow. Where the dead go, we must not follow.
I think it's a very, very powerful piece and a reminder of the power of the sea. And it's very easy on a calm summer's day when the sun is spangling and it's twinkling. It's easy to forget the deadly power of the sea. And talked about it being about grief. And I've known many people go to the island, carry grief to the island, and somehow during that time that they're there, something shifts for them. And it's not that the grief has gone, but the island in some way can help people to reorder their thoughts and to reframe things. And of course, it was somewhere where the history is that people die in the logical order. So the oldest to die first, and to die on Enlli was the significance of the sacred thing to do. To die on the way, to drown, meant that they weren't going to go to heaven. They would not even go to hell, but go to purgatory. So reaching the island and finding some peace with oneself is a very significant feature, I think, of its spirituality. And people do say that there's something transformational happens to them when they're there. It's as I said, it's a living, working island, and a stay there can help us sort of slough off the shackles of the modern world. And people often used to say to me, "How do you spend your time?" And I always say it runs out, because it takes time to do the normal things, to boil a kettle for a panad, to boil water to have a wash. We have to walk everywhere. You know, there's no traffic on the island, no transport on the island for us, other than for the luggage. So everything takes time. And then there's somebody to meet and somebody to chat to. And then suddenly all the people in the house to chat to. And then suddenly it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and we're still in our pajamas and we still haven't had lunch. That's kind of how some of the days were for us.
I think it's sort of, I found it quite interesting how quickly you just kind of got used to not being able to flick the switch and put on the electricity, or you know, I mean, it's so handy to flick on the switch of the kettle now, and it is a little bit extra to have to fill the kettle and put it on the gas, but it was just amazing to me how quickly we just got used to that. Now, I think probably, I mean, I think that really struck me about going to was a lot of people were going, "Oh God, are you going up? There's no electricity, there's no electricity, there's no running water, there's, you know." But I like people my age, which I'm 57, we're only kind of a generation or two away from that, really, even on the mainland. I mean, my parents would have grown up as young people with no electricity in their house, no indoor toilets, no running water either, collecting water from the well. So we're not that far removed from it, really. And I was quite interested in discovering that, or, you know, going back to that. I probably myself remember being in kind of like little holiday cottages where we would have had electricity, but we had to go collect water. But it was just very surprising how quickly you get used to it, and you nearly just forget about being able to do the other things then, you know. And I didn't miss the phone at all. I really didn't. I only really realized afterwards that I kind of hadn't missed it. I think I might have gone up once or twice up to the high spot. I think you and I did one day, Matt, just to check on my kids at home, that kind of thing, just to see everyone was okay. But I really wasn't in any way obsessed. I think I did it twice. I found that I was in no way obsessed with going up and putting on WhatsApp and kind of seeing what's happening in the world, sort of thing. And then, do you remember when we came back to Abertaran? There's the little, the National Trust has the car park and there's public toilets. And we went into the toilet and I went, oh my God, you know, hot water. You can flush the loo, like, and we were nearly like, oh my God, you know, this is incredible. So it's just, that's just kind of a freeing experience, actually. You know, it's actually quite freeing to feel that these things are great when you have them, but you can kind of get on without them if you have to, you know.
They are shackles, aren't they? And it's great to be free of those. Would you say you felt that freedom? And were there any kind of counters to the freedom that were?
I don't have electricity or running
Well,
water
yeah,
at home.
Imagine yourself in your position of actually having more comfort on the island than she has at home.
But it was nice to be in a kind of shared community, because I feel like a bit of an oddball normally. It's like everyone else got electric light and flushing toilets, so it felt like a whole island was there. And also the Welsh speaking aspect of it, like being around a whole island of people all speaking Welsh, and them saying, we'd rather you tried to speak a little bit of Welsh and get it wrong than don't try at all, which was really encouraging. So yeah, we got to use a little, I got to say bendigedig. Brilliant.
Yeah, there's something I should have said, that Welsh is the first language of the island. And there are some people, so the wardens there and the people at the farm, Welsh is their first language. less so at the observatory, I'd say, but you know, all of the information is bilingual and it will be in Welsh first, and there will be the presumption that you speak Welsh, so people will address you in Welsh without thinking, and that's kind of that's how it is there, and that's fine. Yeah.
Well, we were in the observatory. I think you were in one of the
Trust
the
meters.
trust houses. So when I went, I was in the observatory, which is where the Bardsey Bird and Fields charity is. So we had a little community within there as well, because we were living with the wardens. And the wardens actually who were there for more of the time were away, but the assistant wardens, Ed and Ollie, and also a lady called Steph who was working with Bangor University, working with the Shearwaters, was there as well. So it was lovely to just kind of potter around with them as well. And they could give you information on the moths, because they did the moth traps every morning. And they would get them out and onto the picnic tables at the front of the bird observatory, which overlooked the low-lying level of the island out towards Island, and just be able to bring them out and use their expertise and show you what the different moths were, and this is this moth and this is that moth, and it was just so wonderful to kind of be part of their study and what they do on the island as well. To be around where the nets are for the ringing of the birds. It was just really, really good to be with experts too, so you can just ask a question.
Have you got anything based on the natural history?
I've got one on Solva, which I won't do yet, and an ending one. I've got a bit of a tongue twister, like I say, which kind of sums up Enlli, because even though there's not many people there, and there's no cars there, and there's no amenities there, there is so much other stuff there, and it is just absolutely packed with natural beauty, which I've tried to put into this poem. This is called Enlli Beckons. Sea swaddled, tide guzzled, wave riddled, froth burbled, cliff rumbled, rock mottled, slab crinkled, pot hollowed, bay huddled, seal wallowed, sand crumpled, weed piled, magpie cackled, puffins sailed, cormorant straddled, gulls heckled, sheep flockled, fleece frizzled, thrift freckled, Harry huddled, wind whistled, mist foggled, rain drizzled, bones jangled, gorse prickled, heather purpled, tree wizened, money summoned, scarf muzzled, chin woggled, eyes wrinkled, skin frizzled, stars twinkled, saints welcomed, horizon haloed, Enlli beckoned.
Oh, yes, beautiful, that very, very resonant, and there is so much to feast on. And listening to that poem, I felt like the new visitor to the island, and it's just like, oh, I'm going to go down there, and I'm going to see this, and there are these clouds to see. Oh no, there are these birds, and there are these ones.
Yeah.
There is just so much. There's a kind of an overwhelming sensory.
Yeah.
You captured that overwhelming sensory experience. in that.
I couldn't wait to get out and be up. And I remember that first afternoon, I was just itching to get out there and experience it all. And I just wanted to walk because I could, because there was no 2-year-old pace that I had to go at, and I could just go. And the freedom that felt, that because I wasn't having to stick to certain paths, I could go wherever I wanted, whilst respecting, of course, where the birds were nesting, where the seals were. It just, Enlli just opened its arms out to us, I think, and I just tried to make most of it. Yeah.
Mention the seals.
Yeah.
Oh, the seal.
Not saying anything about the seals.
Oh.
It's known for its scents and its Mount Shearwaters, but it's got a huge seal colony. They've counted 200, 300 seals that come and fall out onto the rocks, not far from where the boat comes into harbour. And they're very close. I mean, obviously we don't go too close, but they're close enough and it's comfortable enough to sit on a rock, sit on the grass, and the time just goes watching the seals kind of going about their daily business, and to listen to the sound. The first time I went, I was sitting down at the boathouse and I could hear this sort of like sound, and I thought it was the wind in the flagpole.
Yeah,
So ghostly. Yeah.
Seals.
moaning.
Yeah.
I remember being outside the schoolhouse, and their sound, they were down on the pond line, and the sound was just drifting up and over, wasn't there? And you could be anywhere on the island, and they serenade you.
Yes.
It's wonderful.
Mm.
Yeah, ghostly, but
We were on, it was a nice sunny day, we were sitting up at the harbour one day, and it was kind of, we just laughed up at them because it was like one of the rocks that Mel was talking about was sticking up out of the water, and it might have been about 6 or 7, but there was one very cheeky one, yeah, and he'd start, "Arr!" and then 2 would get off and the tide would come in, and there could be 4 down there, and it all, and it ended up with this little tip of rock and him, you know, just left up on it.
King of the castle. Yeah. And I had this experience where I'd seen a seal on the beach, and I thought he'd gone in massive seals, like they're bigger than us. And I thought I'd lay down to sort of see the seal perspective. So I saw the shape of him on the ground, and I sort of like prepared to sit down, and then realized that the huge bloke seal was still there, and he sort of shouted at me, and I got yeah. But those myths about the seal,
Oh, yeah.
And Mel's got a great story.
I have a story. I don't know if are any of you are you all familiar with the legend of Selkie? Yeah. So I won't go into the legend then. I'll just read the story because it's to do with that. So she stands on the shore. Across the sea, the islands are visible, but the misty rain approaching from behind will soon engulf them. The waves boil jade and grey below her. The sky is the stippled pearl underbelly of a fish shot through with a cold blue. Seagulls squawk, spreading their wings as they float upon the squalls of wind. It whips her hair into a frenzy around her. Stoic as Medusa with her mane of snakes, she pays it no heed, but looks out towards the island. The smaller is the crumbling molar tooth of mountain rising high above the sea. The larger is longer, leaner. Her eyes are drawn to it, to the scattered houses standing pale against the grey sky. The houses are known to her, but not in any way that she would be described as familiar. Her gaze flickers over them to settle on one house in particular. He would be stirring now, hitting snooze, putting off the inevitable rising. Eventually he would stretch lazily, throw back the duvet. Coming onto the landing, it would strike him as strange that the children are not up. Puzzled, he will open the door and wake them gently. Gavin will smack his lips and snuffle softly, consciousness coming slowly. Maud will wake quickly and purse her little mouth for a kiss. "Mammy," she will say. He would carry Gavin downstairs, Maud close behind, holding onto his t-shirt. To his surprise, she will not be in the kitchen, though 3 bowls of porridge stand waiting by the microwave. "Let's get some brekkie, see where Mam's got to." He'll be jovial still, thinking she's simply out with the hens. A large seagull flies up from a rock, startling her. It always amazes her that such large, heavy birds can be so graceful in flight, and yet it shouldn't. She and her kind are similarly transformed in the sea. He will call her from the back door, be forced to stride down the field when he gets no reply. Frowning, he will come back into the kitchen. Worried now, he will be anxious not to frighten the children. A sheep will bleat in the distance, and it will hit him. She told him all along, warned him. I'm a queer fish, she said, a cold creature. I have enough warmth for the two of us, he smiled. She wanted to believe him. Come with me to my island, he urged, as they swam together those warm summer nights. If you don't like it, I won't make you stay. Promise? I promise. But you stay. We'll be happy. I'll make you happy. Reassured, she had yielded, but once there, though she tried, in the vacuum created by the air and wind, and the relentless sound of the sea, she could not find peace. In an effort to feel free, to escape the empty spaces that choked her, she walked the shores daily, or tramped over the sparse heather hills on trembling legs, scattering the scraggy sheep that scared her more than she did them, to reach the highest point, to breathe. She avoided his family and the other islanders, ducked behind walls or bushes if she saw them coming, hid behind the door or under the windows inside the house if they tried to visit. Their advances, although kindly meant, frightened her. She did not know how to react to the curiosity in their eyes or to the offers of tea and soda bread. Their ease made her uneasy, highlighted her oddness, her otherness, and made her skin prickle. I love you, he said. Why? In answer, he had laughed softly and held her gently to him. He will run blindly now to find her coat. Falling to his knees, incredulous, he will see that it has gone from where, finally, in fear, breaking his promise, he had hidden it. He will run back, throw open the front door, howling the name he had laughingly given to her out on the sea, into the wind, the sensibilities of their children forgotten momentarily in his anguish. Elsa! Gavin, crying in his high chair, reaching up his little webbed hands, her legacy to him, will look for comfort. Moll, frightened, will cling to the mad creature her father has become. Still, she cannot do it. She cannot stay. The call is too strong. She puts on her coat, slips into the sea, cuts swiftly through the water. Excited now, transformed, free at last, she swims down, down, back to her own kind.
You held the room.
Thank you.
And yeah, that notion of freedom and restriction, yeah, and that struggle, and I don't know, I identify with that struggle that she has, and I think it's something common in all.
Well, we all feel a bit other at times.
Yeah.
We always come across situations where you don't fit in, no matter what age you are or where you are. So I think it probably is a common feeling to sometimes feel slightly the other. And I suppose in the story, the trust was broken down between the two of them, and she discovered that he had actually taken her coat.
And of course, there's a like getting sort of teachery and preacherly about it. There's a message there for us in terms of looking after the environment that the seals live in, because there is that sense, isn't it, when I'm looking at a seal in the water, there's just that very strong connection, and that reinforces for me the importance of us looking after their community.
Sometimes in their eyes there's something very human or something, or you can kind of, we probably are transferring it onto them, obviously, but I suppose of all sea creatures, I mean, the fish isn't particularly, you're not going to look at fish and get a warm feeling, but the seals, there is, I suppose they're that in between thing, aren't they? And that really,
Any, did you write about any of the creatures? On the island?
I have written about the seals, but it's about when we're leaving. So I don't know if you wanted to have that now or when we actually talk about
when we talk
departure.
about
Yeah,
departure.
yeah.
How about you? Did you write anything about the
No, but I was really taken, I don't know, you didn't make much of it, but that story that you told me of the idea that we had this fantasy story that women became selkies.
Mhm.
And do you want to tell it? Because
Yeah, no,
it stayed
it-
with me, and it's really
It's
fun.
actually, this was a book, a fiction book I read, but it's actually, her research was true. So it was a book set up around the Orkneys, I'd say, somewhere. But anyway, in the book, it kind of went through from the present age to the kind of late 1800s. But in the late 1800s, a young vicar had moved up to the islands, and he was quite fascinated with the ideas of the Selkies, and that there was actually this in-between creature that had come from sort of Scandinavian places that was like a seal and able to live inland, but was more human. But in the book, he visits the museum, and he doesn't put any pass on a kind of storeroom, but later he meets someone, and a friend of his who also works in the museum. But there was a tradition in Scandinavia, and I suppose further north even, of skinning a seal. And they used a kind of a thin part of the hide, like a waterproof membrane, that they built and put all the way around them and around the kayak. And they were able to, it was actually waterproof, and they were able to sail really far in the kayaks with this. And it's so some people believe that these people were kind of washed up on shore or got shipwrecked, but that if a woman hid their coat, they were kind of stuck because they couldn't get back and make the journey home. So they think that maybe the legend came a little bit from some of this, you know, that maybe a man had got washed up, and in the book that I read, his grandmother, would have happened to her, and he reckoned that she actually married someone from Scandinavia or something, and that she had hidden his coat. Then he found it, and he went off back off in his kayak, but had a child. So yeah, so it's just kind of an interest. Sometimes it's quite interesting to see where these stories come from. But that might have been the basis for a lot of the Celtic stories.
And that you know, different the connections between Orkney and Shetland and Scandinavia are
Yeah.
very close.
They're close.
Close
Yeah.
connections, aren't they?
Yeah.
And they all have their own kind of versions of the story and how the stories travel
Yeah, yeah.
through cultures.
And the shape of a seal's head is quite like the human head and
Yes.
shoulders. You can
Yeah.
imagine that, so it's a bit gruesome, but you can imagine that if you took the internal organs out, you could put it on and have the blubber, and that would be really protective if you wanted to travel. So yeah, that's love that.
Do you want to say, sorry, go on.
I just going to say something about the protection of the wildlife on the island, and how everything is protected, and how the bird populations are observed with ringing, and just going back to the wardens as well, and they would go out every night to go and check on the Manx shearwaters in their burrows to make sure that they were growing properly, to weigh them, to measure them, to look at how their wings are developing, and just the love and dedication that people have on the islands towards conserving and preserving the wildlife that is there. You know, not just the birds, but as you say, the seals, but also the wildflowers, the way that the sheep are used by the farm to manage some of the meadows, to make sure that the grass is cut back enough, to make sure there's enough insects, to make sure that the birds can feed. So it's all, you know, human presence there there's a very fine balance between it being a wild place and then humans kind of helping to preserve what is there. But you know, the bird life is just immense. We went on a walk. Did you go on a walk as well?
Yeah.
And we went up this place called Penfriston, which is, you've got the if you're coming from the mainland, you're coming towards it, and as we've said, you're hit by this Mynydd Enlli, maybe not a mountain. And as it slopes down towards where you come in on the boats, it's called Penfriston, and you can sit up there and have an excellent view of the east coast of the island, which is basically a cliff that goes straight down into the sea. And that's the only part of the island that you're not allowed on. So it's quite dramatic, really. And we went up there, we spotted razorbills, guillemots, puffins. I love how the puffins
I
fly
know.
with their legs stretched out like that.
Yeah.
It's
Razorbills.
so prominent. Razorbills.
Razorbills.
The razorbills. I'm not a bird.
No. I'm a razorbill person, not a fucking person.
Oh, well, the gulls and the kittiwakes here, you know, people might see gulls as being absolute pests. So rip open your bins and try to steal pasties out your hands and just look at you with their beady little eyes. But on the island, there's so much more than that. They are absolutely beautiful. They take on a completely different. You can take on a completely different view of them. Yes, we went up on the wildlife walk, and the wardens found the burrows with the Manx shearwaters, and they just lay on the ground in the old walls of the island where they have their nests, and just put their arms in, so then they're up to there, and then just pull out this little fluffy little chick. And then it's just the softest thing. It's like you stroke it and you don't even know you're stroking it because it's so soft you can't even feel it barely. And the parent comes out as well. It's a real family affair going on down there, and it's just beautiful. And the care and attention that the wardens have for looking after these birds is just awesome, really. They go in.
And what did we have?
Yeah, so we
We were there earlier. We were
experience.
there earlier in the season.
It looks like the island is covered in rabbit burrows because there's all these holes everywhere, but it actually they're shearwater nests. And we've got quite used to this at this stage. And one night Amanda came in and said, "I think there's something in the loo, in the compost loo," and we saw.
They all went, oh, no.
No, we all went, very ridiculous. Nothing could get in there. Anyway, so a shearwater had nested by our bucket of food, presumably to get the heat, and it was a wooden box, so it was like a ready-made burrow. And yeah, we called her pooing. We said pooing on Mrs. Shearwater's head because we had to carry on going. And every morning she'd have brought in another load of nesting materials. And they can't actually walk properly on land because their legs are so big. And yeah, so they're kind of awkward. We never did actually see her doing that. Did we?
No, but we saw her, yeah, because
Got photos.
Yeah.
the day we went on the bird walk, I think it was between the Monday night, I had heard something, and then we went for the bird walk, and they were telling us how fascinating the shearwaters were, and that they can't really walk on land, and they spend so much of their time just flying out at sea and hundreds of miles. But it was a very stormy night that night, and I went to go out to the loo, and the shearwater was just, I couldn't believe it, like this creature. I mean, I thought I'd never get within, you know, we weren't there early enough for them to pull the chicks out. They were just hatching, and I thought I wouldn't get, like, I was near, I mean, I was there to the shearwater, and I just thought I would never see one of those up so close. So it was absolutely, I was thrilled with that.
Were they making noise? Sorry.
Well, I was just thinking noise.
Yeah.
So when they fly in at night, so they fly in under when it's dark, cloudy, when there's no moon, and preferably a new moon, so that they can get safely to the burrows without being attacked and predated by the black bats and the black bats. And when they come in, the noise, that the air is full of birds and full of the sound. That's the noise that the adults make. But the birds, the pair of birds in our compost loo box were like it's a lovely sweet kind of, and there was an egg. There was an egg.
Yeah,
There was an egg,
yeah.
And we were, you know, and don't know what became of it.
Yeah, just when we were talking about the I wondered, yeah. Did you write the poem about that?
No, but I did write a poem about the compost loo.
All right.
People are very curious about the compost loo, and it's funny.
Yeah.
Compost loo. They built a room with a millionaire's view to do in nature what animals do. Bury ourselves one shit at a time. We sit on a wooden throne made by hand, return what was borrowed from the land. Waste into fertilizer for absolutely free, safely deposit it far from the sea. So Mother Earth is enriched, passing through us as we go passing through.
So the house that we stayed in, one of the 10 properties that are let by the Barnsley Island Trust, big farmhouse, kind of down away from the track. Most of the houses are built along the spring line on the mountain, but this one is built kind of further away. Big property, fantastic views across and up the island and then out across the Irish Sea. And in the late 1940s, 1950s, it was home to the artist and writer Brenda Chamberlain. And there are quite a number of her sketches on the walls, particularly upstairs. And there's been a lot of restoration work to try and keep these drawings of horses, Brenda Chamberlain, typical pictures of people sort of lolling on boats, and a lot of restoration work. And they have to keep that house, try and keep the humidity fairly level to keep the houses. But it's also a very artistic, so it inspires a lot of artists, and a lot of visual artists, a lot of painters there. And there's a woman who she's been spending kind of the whole of the summer doing craft workshops. And I wondered if you two, because you brought your books along with you, if you wanted to show them to people, talk about how you made them. Have you got any writings from these? Or
I've got.
I didn't bring my writing about them with me.
So yeah, the artist was called Carol Shearman. Interestingly, all the pigments that we used, she had made from things on the island, and so she showed us how to make little booklets I wrote online. But all these pigments are things that she'd made. So that's copper, and the black is called bone black. So she'd burnt bones and made an ink out of those. And do you remember what yours are like, grassy?
Yeah, so when we first went to see Carol, we went on a walk. Did you go on a walk as well?
No.
So we went on a walk along the lane and down into one of the fields, and all the fields have got names, but I don't remember what that one was called. And we picked lots of flowers and other sort of greens as well, which was a bit weird at first because, you know, that's not what I do. You don't pick wildflowers. But she was so like, there's so many here, just enjoy them and love them. And so we did, and we really did. And then the colours that I've got on mine are not just ones that she's made, but what nature has grown. So we've got fuchsia and dandelion and so many different ones.
Wow.
I can't remember how many, but
Yeah, lots of different grass. Oh, campion.
Catsia.
Yeah.
And then we just took them and rubbed them onto the paper before we then cut it and made it into the booklet. So it's all natural. And so your black is bone black.
Yeah.
My black is tea kettle and chimney. So it's the soot taken from one of the chimneys,
Yes.
and mixed up. Iron ore, rusty gate. She took some rust off one of the gates and mixed it up. Rusty gate on there. And just being within her studio was an experience in itself as well. It was just absolutely stunning in there because she's taken objects that she's found on the island and made into her own artworks. So for example, these shells, there's hundreds of these little shells with their tops missing, and she's threaded them through almost like I don't know what you would call it, like a shower curtain.
And it was a waterfall.
A waterfall of just all these shells coming down and the sound that it makes. And it's just basically the island inside a room. She's very clever.
I was just looking back at something I had written and I hadn't even remembered it, but she has a pestle and mortar for crushing, grinding stuff up. But it was I don't know which is which, but the bowl was half a boy from the sea that had washed in.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, so she really uses all sorts of little things that she finds around.
Like the paintbrushes.
Yeah, twigs, and, yeah.
Feathers and hogweed stalks with bits of. So, anything Mrs. you'd like to read? Blanche? You've read for a while. Oh, you did. Or Lottie?
Should we introduce Solbach? Because mine's to do
Oh,
with
yes,
Solbach.
yes, yeah. People say, is there a beach on Barty? And there kind of is. The place is northwest, and it's called Solbach. And it's okay for swimming, but there are better places.
But there are enormous seals
There
in the water.
And there are also there are ridges of seaweed, and there are lots of little waders and wagtails and chuff that kind of skitter around in the seaweed and on the sand.
Lay eggs.
Lay eggs,
I
yes.
come across the little eggs and I think officially you are kind of told not to swim because it's very tidal and currency.
Yes, it is. Yes.
When we arrived, as I say, we come after the storm, so there were massive piles of seaweed just dumped onto the beach from the swell, yeah, that's what I've based this poem on. On Solbach Beach lie locks of green and helter-skelter braid, tide-woven licorice black and tan, crackled plaits of honeycomb. Enlli picks up strands, puts them on her head, says, "Look, mummy, I'm beautiful." I bend, run fingers down sea-softened femur, wooden like the memory of unripened mango. I touch a broken ball joint, white-pocked, aerated. A grey wrist arteries orange. I caress, press in, trace veins. We too were here once, bathed in these rock pools, hair fanning out like seagrass. Enlli is dancing now, flicks water where waves meet wellies, spatters salt on crimson cheeks. An exoskeleton is thinner, paler than expected. Flesh gone, a blush more orange than pink. Golden hair still lines the joints, looks out of place, gives unworthy extravagance to a lifeless corpse. Nearby, Enlli searches for a cowrie shell, legend rippling that if she finds one, she will return to this place, where hair now piles, where air fizzes, tangs black your tongue. We were here once. I pick up a sack, hardened, one so full of life, now oil slick black. It holds different currency, shakes percussion of sand. I turn it over, and gold slowly starts trickling out onto the beach. Remnants cling to the base of a plastic bottle, edges splayed like starfish gripping shale. A cord entwines, strangles. An oyster shell, mummy. She holds up the curled pearl edges of a battered Coke can. I blink, look down, join the salty tears of 1,000 drowned mermaids. Yeah, the seaweed reminded me of hair, and there was so much of it. And then within it, there was also the wash up of man-made objects. And there was one that I saw that I thought was sort of a star, and it was the bottom of a soft drinks bottle that had eroded away and then sprayed around the edges. It was star-shaped, and it's quite beautiful in its own way, but also so alarmingly awful in another. And yeah, the battered Coke can was just so shiny and pearlescent, and it just stuck in there with the seaweed. So it's kind of all full of life, but at the same time, you're constantly reminded of the impact that people are having on the environment. And that's what I took from Solbach that day.
as you're we haven't departed yet, but as you're gazing back to that week, what would you say the highlights were for you? And what's fed your creativity from the island?
Well, I kind of felt we were very lucky on the island because we had the bird walk and then we Peter's surname is that, was it?
Oh, Peter Lockyer.
Peter
Okay.
Lockyer, he's an expert on Brenda Chamberlain, and there's a very kind of, if somebody's doing something on the island, you get a little note in your door. So he had put in a little note to say he was doing a lecture on Brenda Chamberlain up at the Bird Observatory. And like we were very lucky to be there at the same time he was and have that lecture. And then we also had Joe Yeah.
Porter.
Joe Porter was,
Yeah.
there's a chaplain on the island every week, and we were very lucky it was Joe, and the little oratory she used was in the house just sort of beside it. I think they would have been the outbuildings of Paris really.
I think it was an old page.
Yeah. And so we went there every morning around 9:30 and kind of was just like a meditation and every morning, which is really nice. And then we also had an Aslan Glowen, which was a night of music, and that was really, really, really lovely. We went around and put leaflets in actually about that. But it turned out that there was another group on the island were organising it as well. Didn't turn into a faction fight. We all got on okay. And that was lovely for me because and I think Matthew really liked it too. There was a lot of Welsh, some beautiful Welsh singing that night. And some of the people had come and they obviously had songs they had practiced. And I just said there was someone who sang the lullaby. Half sang a Welsh lullaby, and I couldn't understand the language, but I actually got very emotional listening to it. So that was actually a lovely evening.
Yeah, and the Welsh national anthem. Everybody stood up and moved into the centre, and we were, even though you didn't know the words, you were just like transported by this really loud, liberated singing. It was fantastic. That was my peak entry moment. Actually, peak moment.
Talking of peaks, I think going up the Mynydd, having the freedom to walk around the island and the time, I think time is strange on the islands, and whilst we were there shorter than what we were expecting, it felt like we were there for such a long time. And not only that, so it's your time, but time doesn't have any meaning or notion on the islands. You know, breakfast just happens, lunch just happens. Going to the chapel for the last ceremony in the evening with Adrian, who was our chaplain when we were there, it just happens. And then you start thinking about how time of the island and how long the island has been there and how long it will be there to come. And as you say, there's, you know, rumours of 20,000 saints being buried on the island, and that's a huge amount of time since the pilgrims happened, and we're still on our own pilgrims or on our own pilgrimages to the island, and it just has no sense of being. And so then to go out and walk down to the lighthouse, which we haven't mentioned apart from your poem, the lighthouse on the southern end, and up and round to the bird hides there's two of those, up onto the Mynydd, down to Pencriston, down to where the boat comes in. Just that freedom of not having to do anything else and just being. I think that was my takeaway. Just being there. Yeah.
Because you were totally unencumbered, weren't you?
I just went.
Total freedom. And it's like, whatever the weather, you were out there.
I got soaked. On one of the days it was so stormy, and I hid in one of the bird hides, and it was so exciting because the wind was kind of going like that, so it's like a little cutch, and you could look out, but you were in your own little warm little kind of bosom, really. I got and my socks stank. Do you remember when my room? Oh my god, because everything was wet. Everything. No, you didn't on that day. Everything just got really wet and then wouldn't dry. And it was fine. I just put it all in a plastic bag and tied it up really tight, and then it was fine. Yeah, I'll just shove it in my bag. Yeah, just not letting anything kind of get in the way of your experience, just enjoying it for everything that it was there.
And I think that's it's taking that and bringing it home and being able to continue with that, not just the physical aspects of living on the island, but that's the effect, the emotional effect, the psychological effect it has on us, and to carry that through. You talking about being in the bird hide. I've got a poem that I should have brought my books with me, but I forgot. To write a poem on the theme of water, and to take a photograph and then write the poem from that. And the photograph that accompanies this poem was taken from one of the bird hides, and it's kind of looking into the sea, the Irish Sea, which is the name of the poem, crashing onto the rocks, and there's a kind of curl in the water, which is very like the row on Madge's head. This is called Irish Sea. I come for you, stealth in my breath, stalling my swell until I suck back, lift up, push forward, plunge. My fetch stretches a mantle, glittering mineral colours of platinum, lapis, tin. I spit, spill, surge as my lover, the wind, opens my sage eye, so that you may reflect, haul out a creel of memory, know my wisdom. I see you hiding, bolted, stayed in a stormful 7. When my spinning sprite's trough crest, spray drift, I invite you out to touch my magic. So we all have to leave. What's departure like?
I just want to say one thing.
Go on.
Just because of living so much off grid, then sometimes it looks like the past when you're on Enlli. And the thing about the lighthouse is it's a very modern lighthouse, and it doesn't have a lighthouse keeper because it has a solar powered light. So it doesn't need a lighthouse keeper anymore. And sometimes you get that disconnect with, is this the past or is this the future? Because they are still they've got a lot to teach us, I think, about living with simply solar power and managing the way they do. So yeah, it's both things possibly at once.
Yeah, and I think change is quite challenging. Change on the island. The poem that I opened with, "If I Could Dream," that refers to the swinging beam, the once swinging beam of the lighthouse, and it's not lighthouse anymore. It's a solar powered red LED that only comes on when the light drops. So we only see it at night, whereas in the past the light has been there day and night swinging around. So there's progress and change. But yes, I remember you saying, is this what the future looks like? The way that we were living on the island, so close to natural resources, is this living in the future? I think it's a really, really important question.
And they've also got it in the kitchens. There's actually 2 sinks or 2 taps, so there is running water really. But how the water is done is there is a large rain butt outside the window of the kitchen, just kind of, you can't see it from the window, but there's a pipe coming from that. So one of the sinks is actually, when you turn the tap on in that sink, it's rainwater you're getting, and you use that for washing up and washing yourself. And then the second sink is from the well on the island, but that's kind of a finite sort of resource. So you're just asked to use that for drinking. Whereas I thought it was quite interesting that they were actually piping rainwater into the kitchen as well for people to use.
Yeah, so we're acutely aware of the limit of those resources, the scarce resources. And when I went, because I went for a third time at the end of the summer, and yeah, the water levels, there was a lot of concern because we've had such a dry summer, a lot of concern about there being enough water. Yeah, I remember when my daughter lived there, she was there during the beast from the east, really big freeze, and the pipes from the well up on the mountain, the well pipes that came into her house, they froze, and she was out without well water for 3 days, I think, and had to go and melt snow and boil up snow for water. So she said, I became acutely aware of the effort that it took to make my cup of tea. So what about departure? You've written departure pieces?
I have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you written departure?
No, I
Departure
didn't
piece?
like what, that was my one about
Oh, okay.
the sea
Right.
on the way there.
Okay.
So when I got home, I found it I was so surprised at how difficult it was to kind of revert back to just normal life, which I wasn't expecting at all. And it took me a good couple of weeks to kind of reconnect with normal life. I remember standing there, I think it was the evening or the second evening when I got home, standing in my garden, and it's not overlooked at all by any means, but you can see the town, the Carmarthen down below, and it felt so claustrophobic. I don't feel that now, but just the impact that staying on Enlli had on me was quite a lot, really. This is called On the Last Afternoon, Sitting at the Edge of Enlli, waiting for Bentley 3 to arrive. So Bentley 3 is the boat that Colin skippers across the Sound. And as you say, if he says we don't go, we don't go. His word is final. So Mel and I are there with our packed lunch because we've cleaned and packed up all our belongings. We're just waiting for the boat to come in and just sort of looking at everything, just trying to remember it almost like it's a photograph just to take back with you. In the Bay of Enlli on Enlli, over 50 seals are sunbathing. Tar black, light grey, speckled. Some relax underwater with only their heads pointing out, noses tipped to the heavens. Their eyes are shut in meditation. Some are bobbing, half submerged in the tide like blubbery bananas. Heads and tails curve into the air. Small fins daintily extend for balance. Others loll upon the land like heaving vats of fat, wide eyes alert to danger. They can't move so quickly there, but still they love to bask in the sun's warmth. One seal, a large one, looks at us as we arrive and hauls himself higher up onto his rock. I think he's in charge. The tide rolls into him and each time pushes him slightly to the right, but still he remains, his chest a piebald puff. Grunt, huff, snort, haunting whoos ghost the air, a melancholic addition to the rhythmic wave breaks and oyster catcher peeps. Not far from where we sit, at the edge of grass before the shore dips to sea, 2 herring gulls wait. The younger of the 2, the one who is sitting, lifts its head as I unwrap my sandwich, the foil a murmur of metal against the roll of the waves. Interesting. The gull arcs its head with a half turn and chirrups softly. It opens its beak slightly, then stretches its left wing and leg out simultaneously as if to say, look what I can do, aren't I clever? But his reward is a smile from Mel and I, and he will not receive any treats from us today. Meanwhile, the oyster catchers watch warily from rocks on the beach. A shelduck the printer. A shelduck something as the sands. Swallows pitch overhead like mini torpedoes. By the narrows, wheatears perform daring acrobatics across the fields. The boats will arrive soon to take us back to the mainland. unaware of the distance it will create between my heart and here. I looked at the sky, the same sky that I shall look at from my garden in Carmarthen. It's like I've dipped my feather brush in copper and streaked the sky, only the colours are inverted and the sky is copper and the clouds remain over white. But I will remember this island, the island colours, and how the island has coloured me. My skin is creamy ochre, my lips are rusted gate. My hair wafts in island sand, cheeks warm with soft crab pink. My heart blazes log fire, chuff orange, sorrel red. I breathe in Tea Petlan chimney, my mind turned charcoal grey. Like the seals, I too am tar black and speckled and connect to this land. I hold posies of dandelion yellow, deep blushes of fuchsia, the gorse, the grass, this ground. Anything else?
Oh yeah, there was a bit of, because we were ended up being all women, there was a bit of a joke about witches and yeah, I don't think it related to us particularly, but it did make me think when I got home. And I have a bit of a thing about growing pumpkins, bit of an obsession. So I wrote a poem about it. It's called The Witch's Food. October, when other fruits have withered, still they swell, worth twice their heaviest weight in rich autumn gold, pumping nutrition from the ground into barrels, through vine limbs strong as a barmaid's arm. A witch isn't interested in faked cobwebs or hate-filled horror halls. If you let her, she will bore you long past dawn with tales of puckered suntanned skin, how plants self-protect with coarse, hairy stems, then offer fruit fatter than the fattest head. Cucurbita, my love, she croons into the moon's canny light. Pumpkin, oh my vast, prodigious pumpkin, how many bellies can we feed tonight?
Okay. Well, thank you. I hope that we've given you a little bit of Enlli shimmering in film for you this evening. Just like to say thank you again. Thank you to Paul and Nick for hosting us, Dominic for stage managing and teching it all, and you for coming. Been lovely audience. Perhaps we'll kind of have a mingle and a chat and a question. And it's lovely to reunite with Imelda and Madge and to bring Lottie into it as well.
Yeah.
So thank you for
And
contributing.
thank you to Write for Word as well. for,
Yeah. Brilliant
having,
host.
having the residency and allowing us all to meet up and go to that very special place. Have a really very special time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.